It's a special crossover edition with Locked On Penguins and Locked On Sharks. We're going to preview tonight's game, talk about the Erik Karlsson trade, and a little bit more right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in, Penguins fans, and welcome in, Sharks fans, to a special edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. You can follow me on Twitter at synonym4wet. Joined today by, of course, my partner in crime, Hunter Hodes. You can follow him on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Joined today by the host of Locked On Sharks, JD Young. And JD, let the people know right off the bat where they can find you on social media and all of your work.
Of course, you could find me on Twitter at myfryhole, where I post everything, and listen to Locked On Sharks wherever you get podcasts, and of course, watch on YouTube as well.
And of course, we thank you guys for making this your first listen or watch of the day, because we're your team every day. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So let's get right into it tonight. The Penguins and Sharks will face off for the second time this season. Was back when the Penguins still had some hope when these two teams last met. That game was a 10-goal performance for the Pittsburgh Penguins. It looked like they were starting to finally round a corner early in the year when they might still be considered a contender, and yet that has not transpired. But tonight, all of that puts aside, we look at this game. There is a lot of implications on it for both teams. We know, JD, sorry to almost kind of twist the knife, you guys are in a lottery race to get the first overall pick. But as for our Penguins, this is a game where the Erik Karlsson trade will loom large, because the Penguins right now, very much not a playoff team. And the first round pick that was sent to you guys could become a top 10 pick. And it is a top 10 protected pick from the Kyle Dubas trade. But we'll get into that, or the Kyle Dubas trade, the Erik Karlsson trade, excuse me, everybody. But we'll get into that later on in the show. But tell us a little bit about what has gone on with the San Jose Sharks this year and what Penguins fans can expect when the puck drops tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the Sharks it's a full-on rebuild, right? In the past 2 years, you've seen a lot of stalwarts being shipped out of San Jose, including Brent Burns, Timo Meier. You had Erik Karlsson, of course, last summer. And then just, last week, Tomas Hertl, a fan favorite of Sharks fans, getting dealt to the hated Vegas Golden Knights. And this team is bad. They're the worst team in the NHL right now, and they're careening towards Mikael and Celebrini, which would be, kind of the nice cherry on top of what has been a terrible season. And that's kind of the hope that Sharks fans have been waiting for, is to try to land this number one overall pick. Sharks have never done it in their history, and, kind of really cement their future going forward with a combination of Will Smith and Mikael and Celebrini to kind of lead the way for that next great Sharks team. But this year has been a year with a lot of injuries, a lot of guys kind of rotating in and out of the lineup. And as you just continue to kind of see a lot of guys who maybe wouldn't be NHL players on other teams, or kind of bottom six or bottom pairing players, get a lot of minutes on the San Jose Sharks team.
JD, I knew the Sharks were going to be really bad this year. I just didn't expect it to get this bad for them. 16 wins all season at this point. Did you expect them to be this historically bad heading into the season, or did you expect them to be, I guess, maybe a little higher up in the standings than where they are right now?
No, I predicted this team to be the worst team in the NHL. But actually, the way they got there is different. I expected the goaltending to fall apart. And going into the trade deadline, they actually had really solid goaltending between Kaapo Kähkönen and Mackenzie Blackwood. Well, right now, they traded Kaapo Kähkönen at the trade deadline, and Mackenzie Blackwood's hurt. So we are running the well-known tandem of Magnus Krona and Devin Cooley. Krona, who's made 3 NHL starts, and Cooley, who's never played it in an NHL game before. So it's been kind of weird, because I thought the offense, they had enough pieces to kind of be competitive. I knew the defense was going to be a mess, and I thought the goaltending would suffer, but it's been the offense has not been able to be sustainable. The defense has been a mess, and the goaltending has been much better than the numbers kind of predict for this team. But yeah, I knew this team was going to be bad, and I think just the injuries to this team that they've suffered, with Logan Couture having played 6 games this year, they never had a full lineup with all their healthy centers the entire season, and just the way this season has gone is, every time it looks like things might start to get a little bit better, somebody gets hurt or something just kind of falls apart.
So you brought it up there a little bit ago. I kind of also, and I imagine some of our listeners would as well, would want to get your reaction to the Tomas Hertl trade, because, I mean, you look at it, that didn't seem like that was a thing. Like, you know that the Sharks are in a full rebuild. They're going for the #1 overall pick. So, we as Penguins fans know this from way back when that happens, everything can and must go so you can bottom out. But there was not even any chatter around Tomas Hertl. That didn't feel like he was going to move. And then 2:58 on the trade deadline day, Bob McKenzie wakes up from his slumber and breaks that this trade's happening. So what exactly came back, and how did you feel about that trade?
It sucked. And again, like, Tomas Hertl is a fan favorite, right? For non-Penguins fans or something, it'd be like trading a guy. I mean, Hurdle's not like Malkin, but trading a guy like Malkin to like the Flyers, right? Where it's just like that hated rival, or something, or like if you're as the Steelers, like trading somebody to like the Ravens, if you're a Steelers fan, like that's how it feels to Sharks fans. Whereas like one of your all-time favorite players going to the team that you hate the most, and then the team that you hate the most is also the defending Cup champion, and also like they're well on their way to potentially doing it. But as for the trade itself, there was whispers that like Hertl could be moved this summer, and I thought this was going to be a summertime deal because of the cap implications with him, with that big contract. Of course, he's a full no movement clause. But saying all that, it was the right move for these Sharks, right? You've been kind of seeing, right? You've been losing all these pieces. Tomas Hertl's 30. He's got bad knees, and like he's not going to be part of your next great Sharks team. The return was a little weird. Getting the first round pick's great. I like David Estrom. I think he's going to be a really solid 3C. Having to trade back 2 3s was kind of weird. I don't really care about the salary retention. Like with the way the cap's going, that's basically going to be like a minimum vet type of player. And the Sharks really don't have anything else to trade at this point. Like they're just running out of like actual dudes that you want to trade. Like now you're entering into the build part of your rebuild here, right? You've gotten rid of basically everything that you can that's not stuck to the floor. And you're going to have to start like adding pieces and actually like adding things. So it 100% sucked. And like it was not a fun day in Sharks land. But it was 100% the right move. And Mike Grier has been like very kind of cold and calculating, and like, this is what we have to do to be better and to get better. And it hurts now. Short term, it really hurts. But in the long term, this team's going to be much better, whether it's stocking up on your prospects. And then you're also kind of opening up, for your Will Smiths, hopefully your Macklin celebrating. Like you're opening up kind of the pathway for some of these young guys to start to contribute here soon.
Right. And that's actually what I wanted to get into next with you, JD. I know this season has been absolute hell for Sharks fans with most games, but who have been some bright spots for the Sharks? We'll get to Mikael Granlund later on in the show, Jan Rutta, former Penguins, of course, but outside of Granlund, especially with how he's played this year, who has been a bright spot for the Sharks this season?
I think you have to point to Fabian Zetterlund, who the Sharks actually got last year in the Timo Meier deal and had a really terrible end to the season. I think he had 3 points in 22 games last year. And, just kind of being, just going from a really fun Jersey team last year to a really stinky Sharks team, you could tell it kind of wore on him. But he had a really good offseason, and this summer has been or this season has been one of the best Sharks. He leads the team in goals. You can kind of just see he's got, as the kids say, right, he's got that dog in him. Just a monster on the forecheck, has been, and it has really kind of embraced his role with the team. He's playing first line minutes, and I think on most teams he's probably more of a middle six type of guy. But Zetterlund, has been, I think, has done a 180 of what most Sharks fans thought of him this summer compared to what he is now. And I think he's looks to be a piece that's going to be part of this team for years to come.
Yeah. So, I mean, outside of that, I mean, Penguins fans, you heard him say earlier about the goaltenders. So tonight, fully expect a shutout given the Penguins' inability to score. And it's a goalie that you've probably never heard of. If you're a Penguins fan, that's a tale as old as time, that as soon as an AHL goalie or a rookie goalie or a struggling goalie comes to town, and well, that get ready for the Penguins not to score. The one other player that I did want to get a little bit of a feel for you guys is Filip Zadina. I mean, that was kind of, I don't want to say unexpected, because you could tell that his time in Detroit had run out. He was trying to move on, trying to get started again. How has he been for you guys? Because he was always an interesting piece to me before he left the Wings, as a guy that maybe the Penguins could target on a cheap deal, because they're very good at career rehabilitation. We've seen it so many times over the last 10 or so years. But how's he been as a San Jose Shark?
I think the first half of the season was him still trying to figure out his role. But ever kind of after the Christmas break and really after the All-Star break, Zadina's been excellent for the Sharks. He's 2 goals in the last game against the Flyers, and he's really found that scoring touch that he was kind of drafted for. I don't expect him to ever be like a 40-goal scorer, but he's already hit a career high in goals this season with 12, and I think has a really good chance to hit 15 before the year ends. And if he continues to play these top 6 minutes that he's earned, next season, I think you're looking at potential 20 to 25 goal scorer. And the way he's really established chemistry with William Eklund, his first full season, no longer a rookie, but his first full season, who's had to switch to center this year because, again, Sharks have literally nobody else to play center. And Luke Cunnin, that line has really kind of found some chemistry together where they all just kind of know their roles. And I think Zadina has been a big beneficiary of on that line, where Eklund's playmaking, Cunnin's kind of forechecking, and then Zadina's finishing has really seeing that line to come together. They still struggle, I think, in their own zone, and that's to be expected with some younger players. But I think Zadina, has really established himself, and a nice thing, he's still an RFA. He's going to be a nice, easy contract for the Sharks to fit in here. Not that they have to worry about cap space or anything like that, but I think he, again, has established himself as a potential middle 6 guy for the Sharks for the next couple seasons.
Yeah, it's good to see, because he was an easy guy to root for. So it's good to see him finding success. And it's hard not to find chemistry when you have some of the best uniforms in the National Hockey League. But that is going to do it for this first segment. When we come back, we are going to talk Erik Karlsson trade, the fallout from it, and everything else in between. But before we do that, we got to tell you about our sponsor, and that is Ibotta. Grocery bills are so expensive these days, but now they don't have to be. Start getting cash back on your grocery shopping with the free Ibotta app and get cash back every time you shop. Don't you love making money, but also love spending money? Don't we all? Now you can make money while you spend it every time you shop with Ibotta. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop for hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much, but with Ibotta, just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and get real cash that you can use to cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Join the over 50 million users and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONNHL when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, we're back here On a special edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast, we're joined by JD Young of Locked On Sharks. I'm Patrick Damp. That's Hunter Hodes, as always, here on the Locked On Penguins podcast. So no need to continue to delay the thing that everybody surely will want to talk about, whether it's revisiting the deal itself or what could happen here in this offseason. And that is the blockbuster deal that brought Erik Karlsson to the Pittsburgh Penguins following his Norris Trophy season last year with San Jose. And I'm just going to ask JD right off the hop, right off the bat, you guys want that pick?
I do want that pick, that 2024. And I've every time anything Penguins comes up, anybody asks me, what do you do with the pick? Do you want the 2025, 2024 pick? I am very much cash out right now. I think that pick is at its best value for the Sharks, right? And again, roll the dice 2025, unprotected pick. I just think the avenues for the Penguins to be better, whether it's a little bit better, whether it's playoff better, whatever, I think there's just too many avenues, whether it's just better puck luck. There's too many avenues for these Sharks to kind of be in a worse spot when it comes to the pick. And the 2025 draft is supposed to be a better draft class than this year. But again, I want a top 10 pick in this year's draft class. And I think that's what makes the most sense for me as a Sharks fan, because I think you end up with 3 picks from the 2023 draft class, 2 picks from the 2024, and then 2 picks from the 2025 between the Sharks and the Vegas. And I think right there, that is your foundation. That is your new core for your new great Sharks team. So please send me the pick. And I think my thinking of why it makes sense for the Penguins is guys can tell me if I'm an idiot or not, but just like you want to pay your credit card, that way it gives you more opportunities in 2025, right? If maybe the Penguins come out a little bit better, they can actually use that 2025 pick in the draft, like to trade at the trade deadline. If you want to go get big game hunting, and I think it just gives you more flexibility in the future, where if the Penguins completely bottom out, then you have a pick in a much better draft class where you can add a guy who might be able to help you out a little bit more. Shayna from The Athletic was talking about where this pick, unless it's number one, unless it's Macklin Celebrini, nobody in this draft class is helping the Penguins win in the next 2 years, right? And that's the goal for the Penguins, is try to get another cup for Crosby and company. Nobody they draft right now is seeing an NHL time for 3 to 4 years.
So it partly kind of depends for me. Like if this is a top 5 pick and say they do bottom out and they actually get more draft lottery luck, and I know that would make so many people on the internet mad, and I would be drinking their tears forever just because of everything that's happened. If that pick is definitely in the top 5, JD, I'm keeping it. Heck, even if it's number 7 or number 8, I think I'm keeping it. And the reason is, if Carolina goes to the Cup final, the Penguins get an extra first-round pick for this year. I would keep that pick if it's in the top 10 and dangle that other pick to try and get immediate help. And I know at that point for the Carolina one, if they get to the final, it's almost like a second rounder, but I still feel like they can attach that pick in a prospect or two, or maybe a roster player, to try and get more immediate help for next season, which is more important, obviously, right now, just because they're not going to be making the playoffs this season. But that's how I view it, at least for now. I'm leaning towards keeping the pick for this year, especially if Carolina can get to the final. But if Carolina does not get to the final, then I'll have to maybe rethink my tune a little bit. I think maybe if it's at number 10 specifically, I might lean towards giving it to the Sharks. But if it's, top 8, especially top 5, I think I'm keeping it.
So something to keep in mind with that is you have to since everyone talks about let it drop. But the other teams have to pass you, right? And looking at it where we're at right now, Ottawa is 9 points behind the Penguins. I don't expect Ottawa, who's number 6, right? I don't expect Ottawa to get 9 points more than the Penguins here than the next 15, 20, whatever, how many games we have left. Montreal is they're 5 points back, but again, that's still a really bad team. And it's easy to be we just need to climb climb the tank standings, but it's like you have to root, like as someone who's been watching a lot of Blackhawks games, you have to, like, these teams actually have to win, and there's a reason why they're bad, because they don't win a lot of games. So it's like, it's that kind of delicate balance, and unless they Bettman rigs it for the Penguins to get the first overall pick, and then I'm going to be on this show throwing a fit for as Celebrini just joins in to the Penguins. But I think it's, if I had to guess, I think this pick is going to be like 8, 9, or 10. Now that's my guess is where this thing is going to end up.
I'm mostly with Hunter in that if it ends up top 10, I do want to keep it, just for the same reason he brought up. If Carolina goes to the final and you get that second first round pick, that can give you more options this summer. The other reason that I would want to keep it along with that is we've seen both in some of the moves he's made since becoming the Penguins general manager and president are kind of the same things he did in Toronto, to where he can often make quantity deals, and say you pick it 6, 7, 8, 9, where in that top 10, yeah, that person may not help in the next 2 to 3 years, but you could also theoretically say to, another tanking team, Anaheim, Chicago, Ottawa, Arizona, like, hey, we got this guy 7th overall last year. We can send him to you if you send us 2, 3 prospects, because that does feel like what Kyle Dubas wants to do. Is he wants to not only retool on the fly, but kind of restock a bare cupboard. And if you have that early pick prospect, and then that 31st or 32nd overall pick from Carolina, I think you can do a lot more. But all of it for me hinges on if Carolina makes the final and you have that last pick. If not, I'm with you guys in that you can give San Jose that pick back and just look for 2025.
So as Sharks fans, we want to root for Carolina to not make the finals. Because I want that first round. I want that I want a top 10 pick, 2 top 10 picks this year. Feels, again, I know that the draft class is not as good, but as the Sharks are looking to try to add, I've already spent that pick on a defenseman. I want that pick to be a defenseman. That's why I'm very invested in what this pick turns out to. And it's such a tight group there between these teams here, especially with where we might not know what this pick's going to be until the very, very last day. Because you have about 8 teams that are within 10 points here. So this pick could fluctuate so much going through between now and the end of the season. So
it'll be interesting, just because outside of this game against the Sharks, they got 2 more against the Blue Jackets. There are not too many games where I can look at the Penguins schedule right now and be like, oh, they're guaranteed to win these games. And heck, I'm not even sure I can say that about the 2 games against Columbus left, and even the game against the Sharks, just because of the way the Penguins have been playing over the last couple of weeks. They have only scored 2 goals in the last 4 games. They just lost to a Senators team that had lost 7 in a row heading into this game, and they played 2 good periods, but they took a whole period off. And you can't do that in the NHL. So I look at this schedule and I feel like this could be potentially an all-time tank for the Penguins, because the rest of the March schedule, and honestly the rest of the schedule overall, outside of these 2 games against Columbus and this game against the Sharks, are against mostly bona fide playoff teams. So JD, we could see a historic tank here for the Penguins if their play does not get much better.
Yeah, their strength of schedule on Tankathon is the 13th toughest going into the final stretch here with 18 games left to play. They do have some tough games coming up, but even some of the teams around them, like Arizona's strength of schedule is actually tougher. Ottawa's got a tougher strength of schedule. Montreal's got the toughest strength of schedule. So again, it could just be a lot of losing from a lot of bad teams here.
Yeah, nothing like bad hockey in March and April, something that for the most part, the 3 of us aren't used to, because we've had some good teams over the past 15 years.
I've been watching plenty of bad hockey, buddy, since 2019.
Hey, listen, the Sharks of the 2010s are some of my all-time favorite teams outside of the Penguins. So I guess I can give you that from 2019 to now. But just like us, you got to watch a lot of very good hockey.
I got to watch a lot of very fun hockey for 15 years, and that bill comes due. So.
Yeah, we're learning that right now. But that is going to do it for this second segment. We're going to close out the show here in the final segment. We're going to have JD give us a little bit of a rundown on some of our old pals who went over to San Jose in the Erik Karlsson trade. But before we do that, we got to tell you about our next sponsor, and that is Robinhood Retirement. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claims as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. All right, we're back here for the final segment on the crossover edition of Locked On Penguins and Locked On Sharks. I'm Patrick Damp, joined by Hunter Hodes and JD Young. So, JD, we got to check in on some of our old pals, if that's what you Penguins fans would like to call them. Some players by the names of Mikael Granlund, Jan Rutta, even a little bit Kalen Addison, even though that's not really part of it, but still an old pal. So how have some of these guys been working out since becoming San Jose Sharks?
I will start with Mikael Granlund, who I think has been an absolute home run for the Sharks. And it's crazy to think that he was like literally on the verge of getting bought out to now be in the Sharks 1C because one, everybody else for the Sharks is dead. And two, like he's actually been really, really good. And he's been a great kind of guy for some of the young players. A guy like Fabian Zetterlund, who we mentioned earlier. Zetterlund and Granlund have basically been stapled together for 2/3 of the season. And they have been a great combination. Granlund has also been huge on the Sharks power play. He's, I think their leading point, I would assume he's their leading power play point getter because again, he leads the Sharks into all points. But he's been working out. And I think for the Sharks, he's punching way above his weight as a 1C right now, and it should be more of a very maybe kind of low end 2C, high end 3C for good teams. But I think he's been a great addition. There was a lot of chatter of him maybe getting traded at the trade deadline, but I expect him to kind of come back and be the Sharks kind of 1C next year, unless they're depending on how active they are, or if Will Smith or Macklin Celebrini, a lot of variables there. But he's going to still be playing top 6 minutes for the Sharks next year, and could be a piece for the Sharks to kind of trade off at next year's trade deadline, especially if he continues to play the way that he's been playing. But he's been an absolute win for the Sharks this year, and I don't actually, as weird as it sounds, I wouldn't want to imagine where the Sharks team would be without him, because he's been that important to San Jose this year. And even at the beginning of the season, right when the Sharks started 10-1, that was without Mikael Granlund. And once he kind of got in and got established, that's when the Sharks kind of started to play a little bit better hockey and, kind of started to win some games and be more competitive, is because of Granlund's, what he's done for this lineup. So yeah, Granlund's been great. I don't know what you guys are complaining about.
It's very fascinating just because when he was acquired by former general manager Ron Hextall, he just couldn't do anything right for the Penguins. They tried attaching him on the third line. They tried giving him so many different wingers. Nothing worked. And the fit just wasn't right, I felt like, for the Penguins at the time. They got another pure passer when they needed, I think, another pure finisher at the deadline if they wanted to make the playoffs. And he was just never a good fit, I feel like, also for Mike Sullivan's system. So I'm glad that he is performing a bit better in a different system. And I've seen Penguins fans be like, oh, like this is what they're doing. He's doing with the Sharks. And it's like, yeah, look at the minutes that he's getting, top line minutes and top 21 compared to third line minutes of the Penguins, JD.
Yeah. And you mentioned the fit, right? I think the fit made a lot of sense because you have Granlund and, Granlund's playmaking ability is his best calling card, right? His ability to pass and kind of find. You had, I mentioned Fabian Zetterlund, who's got just a forechecking monster. And then he's playing with Anthony Duclair, who has that speed to burn, and then has the finishing. So it was just a really well put together line that drove a lot of Sharks offense, and Granlund's playmaking was kind of the center of that line and made that line work. But yeah, Granlund's been great. But yeah, again, they playing 21 minutes a night, playing on the top power play. The Sharks for half the season have been running a 5 forward power play unit, and Mikael Granlund's been kind of the main guy on that power play to kind of make things work. So switching to the other guys, Jan Rutta's had an up and down season. He's been kind of used as kind of like a mentor for a lot, because the Sharks do have a lot of young defensemen. He is hurt right now, and I don't expect him to play in this game. He has been kind of dealing with some injuries here and there, but I think Jan Rutta has been a solid kind of every Sharks defender is a bottom 6 defender, but I think he's been doing a good job especially with, again, trying to help some of these young players, guys like Henry Thrun, guys like Kalen Addison, Ty Emberson, and trying to, just mentor these guys, show them how to be a pro, between him and Vlasic. And I think he's been good for that group. And he'll be back next year, kind of in the same role as well. So
yeah, that was the biggest thing with, I think, both of those players for the Penguins that you said, Hunter, was they just really weren't fits, whether it was for the system, whether it was for what they brought to the team, or just in general. They just never really found a stride in Pittsburgh.
Contract too. Both contracts.
Oh yeah, the contracts were, like Jan Rutta got stapled to one of the best defensemen in the league with Victor Hedman in Tampa Bay, and that's going to raise anybody up. And then he comes to Pittsburgh, and it's like, well, he doesn't have his running buddy, and it just never got off the ground. And like Hunter said, Granlund was so much more of a playmaker when they needed a shooter. So JD, before we finish up today, is there anything else that we need to know about the San Jose Sharks going into tonight's game?
Watch out for the Sharks power play, which has been sizzling hot recently. They scored 2 goals against the Flyers. I think they've now are up to 8 goals in the last 5 games on the power play. So I think that's going to be a big contributor tonight, because the Sharks struggle to score at even strength. If the Sharks power play can kind of maintain its balance, I think that's going to give the Sharks a chance to win in this game. But if the Sharks are also really bad at drawing penalties. Luckily, the Flyers gave them every opportunity in the world. But if the Sharks don't get much power play opportunities or the power play, I think that'll lead to a Penguins victory. But I still predict the Penguins to win this game, as I know things have been tough over in Pittsburgh. But the Sharks team is they're toast, and they're a lot of guys are ready for myself included, ready for the summer here. So I fully I got like a 4-1 Penguins victory in this game.
It should be.
Boy, that'd be nice, getting 4 goals.
Yes, I remember those days.
Hunter, anything to add before we wrap it up today?
Yeah, didn't mean to interrupt you there, Pat. I apologize.
No, you're good.
Yeah, it should be a good special teams battle there, because the Penguins have the 6th best penalty kill in the league there, JD. So could be interesting matchups for that. But yeah, I mean, this is a game the Penguins should win. I know things have been really bleak these last few weeks, but this is still a game that you need to win. And as I've been saying on the show all week, I want a full 60-minute effort. I don't care who it's against. The Penguins have not been showing up for a full 60 minutes for quite a long time. You need to do it against the worst team in hockey in the San Jose Sharks. There's no excuses.
Absolutely. But that is going to do it for this crossover edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast and the Locked On Sharks podcast. For JD Young and Hunter Hodes, I am Patrick Damp. Hunter and I will be back for a recap episode on Friday, recapping this game and getting you ready for the weekend. But for now, thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you on Friday.